Yeah, to be honest, I've got no idea what we're doing, what we're talking about. I was just
Exactly. And that's why I didn't say anything. That's why I didn't. Well, but you know what? This is a perfect intro to the show. Andy Rowe, welcome to Buckshot. How are you doing?
mate, I don't know what's going on.
I
I was
know.
just like, you messaged me. I was like, yeah, I'll come on your podcast. Got no idea what's going on. No
But
idea.
you know what? It's indicative of you and anybody who listens to you on your podcast. It's indicative that you would be that sound of a bloke
Oh,
because
thanks.
honestly, you're the every bloke that gets us into any of the like the ones where obviously I came across you first with the rugby pod, and so many rugby podcasts I've listened to, and you go, oh yeah, but there's no affinity with it immediately, because yeah, I'm into fucking rugby, like, but there's
Mm.
no, but you get us all in because you're the sound bloke who goes, yeah, come on, sit in with me. There's that we're sitting on your hip going, go on, Andy, ask him this, go on, Andy. And I don't know of a podcast that's done it that well before. And I can only,
Oh,
I mean,
thanks.
there's been funny blokes as, rugby players and sports people down through the years, but they haven't had somebody as warm is the word I'm looking for, warm as you, that it lets us in the
Oh,
door, that kind of way. Not,
oh, that's nice to hear. It is like it's funny, isn't it? Like I'm not someone that like. Actually, I was going to say I don't like taking praise well, but fuck it, give it to me.
kind of right.
No,
You're
but like
talking to a stand-up comedian who fucking desperately needs your attention. So I
but
get it.
that's the thing, isn't it? It's like you don't go looking for attention or don't go looking for praise, but when you pour your heart into a project and your soul into it, like your stand-up comedy that you do and like your podcast, if someone messages you on Instagram or Twitter and says, man, I love that episode or love the podcast or anything like that, you're just like, that's what you need, because so much of what you do is alone. Like it's
Yeah.
different when you're in a crowd, like you get the buzz off the crowd, but when you're podcasting the whole time, you don't get anything. You might
No.
get a few likes on Instagram. You
Yeah.
might, and as sad as that sounds, it's like you're looking for the likes on Instagram. But if someone comments and someone reaches out to you and makes the effort to say, love that podcast, love that episode, it gasses you up. You're like, that's it. That's the fuel I need to keep going sometimes.
It is the juice, isn't it? And I sometimes because there's that notion that, oh, Andy Rowe will see it and go, yeah, along with the other 10,000. But there's a proper podcasty bloke in it too, because you understand the meaning of trying to track down a guest and bounce it around. Because I've done kids podcasts when they've literally 14-year-olds have gone, hey man, I saw you on telly once, can I do? And I'm like, yeah, whatever, absolutely, kid, yeah, for
Mm.
sure, yeah. Because, and you were, in fairness, you were immediately the same way. Like you were just like, yeah, no worries, Tom. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but that's fine.
Yeah. Let's go. Let's have a chat. But it can be a bit like I have had a instance when I've got to a podcast and I'm doing on Zoom, and again, like I've said yes straight away. I'm like, yeah, let's have a chat. What we got to lose? I'm always up for a chat. And then you're stuck there for like an hour and a half, and you're getting fired these quick fire questions like,
Yeah.
what's your favorite meal? Like, what? Like, please don't tell me you're gonna come with me with that one next. But
Here's the thing: I don't give a fuck about somebody's favorite meal.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Like,
100%. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's. If you had found out before the interview that I had a weird favorite meal and you wanted to talk to me about my weird choice of meal, then okay.
Yeah.
But what's your favorite meal? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite actor? What's your the quick fire stuff? It was a long podcast interview. But most of the time, like the reality is, like you're speaking to people who love to have a chat.
Yeah. And I think for the most part, that's why people listen to this, because I won't pigeonhole it as, so Andy, tell me when you're at your lowest. If you fucking want to tell me. Like, but for most part, it's like over a couple of pints crack. You know what I mean? And that's the premise of the whole thing. Like, and I suppose I could only emulate to see what, to what you do, because the excitement when you ended up bringing out your own podcast, brilliantly named the Andy Rowe Show. I love that you went, fuck it.
Do Do you know what? Like, it was never going to be about me. And the reality of media is that it's a branding exercise, right?
Yeah.
And I've been in media for, like, I've worked in radio since 2005, and I was on a station in New Zealand, and it was the biggest top 40 radio station in New Zealand. And
Right.
I was their news report, news reader slash stunt guy slash doing the silly, wearing my Borat suit in rush hour traffic, reading the news, kind of stuff, like gags. And I did that for a few years, but my name on that was Andy the news guy. And so once I left that show, and media is about profile, I lost all of that. Like, I lost that profile stayed with the show.
Yeah.
So when it was kind of a good learning experience for me, because when it comes down to the media and when it comes down to your podcast, it's a brand. You
Yeah.
are a brand. And even when you're at work, you don't want to, if you go to work, if you're working a normal 9 to 5 day job, you want to get credit for the work you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I thought about the Andy Rowe show was that I'm not going to make any of this about me, because I don't need to if my name's on it. That's the brand. And it's the style of the show, is that I'll, in my head, I feel like I out-research anyone else, that I can outwork anyone when it comes to, before I sit down and interview someone, I know everything that I could possibly know about this person. And
Yeah.
I've done more research than anyone else that's going to interview this person. And all I need to do is guide them through their story. Like, I know they're good stories, I'll just guide them through it. So that requires me doing a minimal amount of talking when I'm actually on the show. So this is a very odd situation for me, because I'm talking about myself and talking a lot. So that's when I was like, well, I'm just going to call it my name, because
Perfect.
that's the only chance I'm going to have to slap my name on it.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
it
it.
it's a and that was exactly how I saw it. I went, oh, this is crafty. This is crafty, because this is like almost a tattoo that you don't talk about. You know, it's there.
Mm.
It's cool as
It's a
shit.
tramp stamp.
It's a
It's on
tramp
your
stamp.
back.
That's when you know you've hit peak, isn't it? When somebody
Yeah.
gets a tattoo of something belonging to you on their back somewhere.
Yeah.
The Andy Rowe show on the lower of their back.
Can you
And
imagine?
oh, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I can imagine actually. I can.
Fucking hell. If I saw someone with that, I would run. I'd be like, that's creepy.
There's
That's
there's
creepy.
there's moments too. Like I remember hearing a great story of Michael Keaton, and he was doing, I think, Birdman or something. He was doing it in
Right.
Times Square, somewhere in New York, and they were between scenes. And a showrunner came over and went, Michael, you got to come here, and see this guy. And
Mm.
this really like hipster, Deliveroo cyclist was like stopped waiting for whatever the guy to come back. He was like, okay, now show me the tattoo on your leg. So the guy was like, fuck what? And like lifts up, and it's Beetlejuice tattooed on the guy's leg.
Amazing.
And the runner was between Michael Keaton and this kid. He's like, Michael, what'd you think of his tattoo? He's like, oh, it's really cool. When'd you get it done? And are you a big fan of it? He was like, yeah, I love the movie. So what's the big deal? I was like, the guy was just looking through him. He was just looking through him going, what? Listen, guys, I don't have time for this bullshit. And just cycled off. It was, and Keaton said he actually fucking loved it. He loved that the character he created went beyond, that in itself was branding. It went beyond the fact that
Yeah.
the guy couldn't see.
That's good recognition for your art right there.
Isn't it? Fuck you, Michael Keaton, but Beetlejuice all day long.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So,
Actually, yeah. Show me your tramp stamp if you got one of the Andy Rowe show.
here we
Yeah,
go.
100%. Yeah, let's go.
So New Zealand then, what brings you to because did you come from a farming background originally?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a
Right.
farm. My father still got a dairy farm in the South Island in New Zealand. So he was kind of a rags to riches. Well, not riches. You can't say that, because he's still grafting on the farm. But it's quite it's quite interesting. Like he was like a real blue collar, worked from nothing, made something of himself, hard 7 day a week, all year round, all weather, like really tough, like West Coast farmer.
Yeah.
And then, mate, my fingers, like my hands, soft and supple. I'll tell you. One of my friends, Dom, made a good comment that the one thing about Andy Rowe is he's never afraid of a bit of hard work, especially when his old man's doing it.
But isn't it good that you discovered that early doors? Because I've mates like who are farming kids and they fucking hate it. It just
Mate,
doesn't suit them at all. But they haven't got out, you know.
you got to get out if you don't want to be in it. I tell you, yeah, I growing up on a farm, like you just people don't realize, like, it's nice to have that space. And I look back on my childhood and I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I was lucky. Like I was really lucky. I was
Yeah.
really privileged. So, I've got nothing to complain about apart from the hard work.
Apart from that graft and that slave labor for no pay, that
100%, exactly. Like I never knew the value of a dollar back then because I never got paid for the hard work that I was doing. I just looked at work and thought, that's shit. There's nothing good about that. There ain't no rewards.
And then what was it in
yes,
the
so
jump
what
then
brought me over here? So I'm a history freak. I love like World War I, World War II history, and there's a lot of that for New Zealanders over here. There's Gallipoli, there's the Western Front. My uncles, like I lost an uncle, like I'm talking great uncles.
Yeah.
I'm talking people that I didn't really know very well. So, especially the one that died in World War II.
It'd be amazing if you were. It's like, what is his regime? He looks amazing, guys. You should see him.
Yeah, exactly. But, New Zealand's got quite it feels like, we lost, per capita, like a lot of people to World War II and World War I. And so everyone was affected. And so everyone has a story about a grandparent or a great uncle and their involvement in in World War II. So I also I loved like war movies growing up as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Indians and cowboys, and then into the war movies, and Saving Private Ryan. So I wanted to go to Normandy, so I went to Normandy. Went to the Somme, went to Passchendaele, went to Gallipoli, and seeing those places. That was what I really wanted to do, is come over here and see those. I came over on a 2-year visa originally,
right?
And luckily enough, I was able to stay. Got sponsored, and I was able to stay a bit longer. So, yeah, that's the history over here is something you don't get in New Zealand. New Zealand's got a lot of history, but it's not. The documented stuff is the white man's history that goes back to about 1850.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, the Māori are not as they didn't write it down. It's more passed down verbally. So it's when you come over here, I mean, you see it straight away, don't you?
It's phenomenal. Like their level of documentation is like we had relations that had ended up in wars and stuff like that in England. And you think, it'd be impossible to find their gravestone, whatever. Absolutely not. You could find it like with 2 Google searches. It'll give you the coordinates of where their gravestone is. You're like, Jesus.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I really want to do as well. So my granny's brother, he died in Egypt during the war.
Cool. And cool, not cool, but kind of cool. Because I immediately think of, Indiana Jones, because.
Yeah. So we found out later he died by jumping on a grenade, and it was a friendly fire grenade. So it wasn't straight away reported because someone had fumbled a grenade. He jumps on it. He doesn't die straight away. He dies of gangrene from his wounds later on because they couldn't evac him because the Germans were strafing the Red Cross fans. So that's how he died from. But anyway, I found by going through the Commonwealth Graves Commission, I want to say, I might have that wrong, but there's a site for the Commonwealth war graves.
Right.
You can find out where they're buried. And I found out where my great uncle's buried. He's buried, like, it's quite niggly. So it's like from Cairo, it's like a 4-hour car ride up to, I want to say, the Syrian border,
Yep.
which is, it's a long way from the South Island of New Zealand.
Christ almighty, it is.
Yeah, so it's quite a intimidating trip, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's my plan, is to go and visit his grave and get a bit of soil and take it home and give it to his daughter. But so that's the kind of stuff that you cannot get in New Zealand.
Yeah, of course. It's almost like Steve Martin had that joke where he was doing, it was a sketch he was doing, and he was walking down a street, and he was trying to give a history of this American street, and he's like, and over there's a building over there, guys, that's almost 70 years old,
Man, it's like, it's like my closest city is Christchurch, and obviously it got leveled by the earthquake in 2011, and there's this cathedral in the middle of it, and it's a little cathedral. Like, if it was in England or if it's in Great Britain, it would be a church. Like, it's not like it. And it was, and they haven't been rebuilding it because there's so much going on behind the scenes of, like, fighting over, like, because it's a historic building. Man, it was built in like 1950. Fuck's sake, it looks like, just because it's built with stone and it looks English, it doesn't mean like it's a historic building. Just tear it down, build it back up. But it's still sitting in the middle of the city because they're fighting over it. Like, how are we going to rebuild this thing? What are we going to do with it? It's like, far out.
By the way, guys, we can use the exact same methods they used when they built it first day, because we still have the scaffolding from the original build. Actually,
We've got the same guys. We've got the same guys.
We literally have the same contractor company. Yeah. Well, you'd like our, now we kind of fucked ourselves up during keeping the whole documentation thing. When, emancipating ourselves from British rule and whatnot, we kind of blew the shit out of it in Dublin during the war of it, and stuff. There was a lot of good documentation blown up.
Really?
There was. It that would have been the one thing that would have been cool to hang on to. But, I mean, in saying that, I think Irish people did all right. But we still have loads of castles. Loads of fucking castles. Like, where I am right now, we're fucking tripping over castles. So if you're into castles,
really?
Oh, we're tripping over them.
Love a castle.
They fucking love them around here. But yeah, it is. I can see, and there is a romantic notion too. I mean, of the idea of, because they do war telling very well, the British, don't they? There is a romance to it. You're like, oh, there is no stone left unturned. They know everything. Even I was watching a thing last night about the history of beef. I know I'm a riot, but in it, this guy in his own land had basically recreated World War I trenches.
What?
And for no apparent reason, because they didn't say, well, here's Jim, and he has his theme park. It seemed to be his own thing. And he had, what it was he wanted to recreate for them what the British Tommy was eating at the time. And it was corned beef, corned beef stew. And that was the whole that segment of the show. But this guy had just done it of his own bat. Like, he was just...
That's next level. That's next level, mate. Just go to Vimy Ridge. Go to the Somme. Like, that's like, it's just over the ditch. And you actually see, man, it's crazy. Like, you see. Have you been over there?
No, I would love to go. So
I went to Passchendaele first. That was all right, and then it was cool, and then very sobering. And then the second time I went to the Somme, which isn't far away, but it's northern France rather than Belgium. And Vimy Ridge is a place there where it was where the Canadians kind of first stamped their mark in the world.
Right.
On the world stage.
Yes.
So New Zealand's got Gallipoli. That's where we kind of first entered the war. And that's where we kind of romanticize about, we've got, Memorial Days for that, Anzac Day, and then Vimy Ridge is for the Canadians. And they have restored the trenches pretty much exactly what it looked like, except like obviously they're not sandbags, they're made of concrete. So it's like It's pristine. It's actually Canadian land. And when you go there, you can actually go underground in the actual underground trenches as well. You can do a tour through there. And then they've got all these like craters that are everywhere, still there from World War One. And you can't walk on these craters because there's like, though it's all wired off because it's still got explosives in there. Yeah, every day you when you're driving around, the farmers are plowing up bombs and grenades and shit. Still today.
I literally only saw
like
that
rubbish.
on Instagram the other day. It was one of these reels with just like music and text coming up, and it was these French farmers, and every year they had, or was it Belgium maybe? There's a collection. It's a fucking, it's a day.
Yeah,
there's a collection day for all the shit that they pulled up out of the ground.
When we were driving around that day, there was like big like the casings with the warheads on, and the farmers put them at the end of the driveway, spray paint them orange, and someone goes around. They drive around every day, and we stopped off, and there was a guy, and he had like this big clump of dirt, and it had a grenade in it, and. We went into a local, there's like these little museums, right? And we went to a museum, and you could literally buy a grenade from World War One. They'd hollowed it out.
Oh, okay.
So it was just like a World War One grenade, and then just like so it's just lead basically. So I bought one. My brother bought one. We sent them back to New Zealand in the mail for my old man.
Of course,
he gets them. So now when we go back to New Zealand, we've got this like World War One grenades that we can just like, hey, check that out. So
when I do think of it, and I know they make comparisons all the time on social media, like, but by Christ, there were some men and women back then where I know they didn't have to look over their shoulder and go, and it was yesterday was cool with TikTok, you know. They didn't have a comparative thing, but to just go, all right, down tools, we're going into fucking war. You know what I mean? When you when you think of that, especially World War One, the hardship of the shit that they had to go through.
Yeah, but they didn't know.
Yeah,
they didn't know what they were going into. Like we know, like if we had to go to war now, we'd be like, nah, fuck that. Like, have we got another option? Like, that's a bad idea.
I've got flat feet. Can I stitch? Can I stitch stuff back here? Can I do that?
I do have flat feet. I'm out.
Same as that. Flat feet, not a hope.
Yeah, exactly. So, but. Imagine that you're thinking you're going off this glorious adventure overseas, you get stuck in a fucking trench.
Yeah, and your feet are rotting off you. Literally, your feet are rotting. Yeah.
The smell of death all around. Oh, God. And the thought that, like, some prick's going to blow his whistle and you have to jump up and take a machine gun in the face.
Yeah. Some guy who's a class above you got that gig. He gets to stand back with the whistle, and you got to run into fucking bullets and stuff.
Some asshole whose old man was a farmer push you over the top.
That is a thing that struck me from gigging over in the UK. All right, and I'm wondering, I'm guessing it kind of struck you because New Zealand there's a lot of comparisons between New Zealand and Ireland, especially here around here. A lot of young Irish farmers go on. It's almost like an exchange program. Because a lot of it is the very fucking same, you know. Grass grows out of the ground, cows eat it, you know. But the class system especially in around London, it blew my mind. Like it's an acceptable thing. You're like, oh well, that's where super wealthy people go over there, and they've been wealthy for 500 years, and that's just that, you know. Whereas we're kind of a bit more of an evil keel here, because we all had nothing 100 years ago, started from nothing. You know,
that's it. And that what you just said blew my mind as well. When I first came over, and I was working for a friend as a building laborer, and just to get some cash so I can spend it on the beers. And he drove me around the city and was like, that house there is worth 70 mil. That house there is worth 200 mil. I'm like, the money. And I'm doubling this in my head because I'm thinking New Zealand dollars into pounds. I'm like, holy shit. And you're like, that's house after house after house after house. And these are the houses that he's working on. I'm like, I can't fit. Like, no, they can drink at a different place. I don't want to be in the same room as them like that.
Yeah.
But imagine how much the drinks cost at the bars they're drinking at.
I know. I experienced it once. We went to a weekend of. It was a weird, very strange weekend. There were a friend of my wife's. She was back from America, and they were back visiting They were in England, and they went, "Hey, does anybody want to come hang with us this weekend?" And you're thinking, "Oh, are you going to a pub or something?" No, they had booked out this manor and butlers and all, the entire fucking thing. And my wife said it to me, I went, "Oh, we have to go." She goes, "These are going to be super stuffy British people, Tom." She worked with her for a while. She knew who she'd married into. Like the guy had gone to, Harrow on the Hill, and there was Eton
Amazing.
boys there as well. I went, "I have to see this shit." She goes, as soon as you open your mouth, there will be prejudice. I went, "Oh, I'm banking on it. Do you not know how I love awkward situations?" She couldn't have been more right. It was amazing.
Mm.
So we're out and their kids are playing cricket on the lawn, and and this is them just coming home for a week. Like
Yeah.
normal people go to the pub and just say hello, but they had booked this thing out. All these guys wearing blazers and stuff, and I could hear older guys, "Is he bloody Irish?" Like, go on, say. And there was a chap I was talking, really interesting guy. He was a fighter pilot with the RAF, and he was talking about how he loves going to Ireland, and he could hear what I could hear, and you could see this apologetic face coming over him, like just going, "Yeah, some older guys still have a bit of a thing in their craw over here." I went, "Don't worry about it. Well, I'm going to enjoy this weekend." And the entire weekend was picking these guys' brains. Even at the time they were giving out. I remember I got talking to one guy, and begrudgingly he spoke to me because I spoke about rugby. He said, "We're going to shit." I says, "Hey, it's England. You'll always be okay. Sometimes, like you'll bounce around. Yeah, you bounce back. You got a huge playing numbers." He goes, "Yeah, well, when you have a bloody captain that isn't even bloody British." I went, "You mean Dylan Hartley?" I said, "Fuck, he's been here long enough. He's a bloody rogue. He's a feckless
Yeah.
rogue." I'm like, "He's a feckless rogue. I bet if he walked in here right now, you wouldn't fucking say it to his face, you know?"
Yeah. Intimidating bloke, that boy.
Yeah, yeah, but
But it's good to see that side of it, though, isn't it? It's like it's such an eye opener, and you do want to see it. It's something that you kind of want to experience. You want to feel like Jack from the Titanic every now
yeah,
and then. You want to go, okay,
perfect.
that's how you do it, you
Yeah,
fuckers.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
but
And
I'll show you how to have a good time.
I depth charged all their drinks that night with tequilas, and they didn't know it. They had their shirts off. They were like, these people had never cut loose. They were guys my age, like in our early 30s at the time, and they had
Oh,
never cut.
I bet they have sometimes, surely in some like members clubs,
Oh,
some real, and they'll
yes,
do some real weird shit.
yeah, fucking a pig's head, like
Yeah,
like Cameron that
exactly.
time, like but
The other types of guys that rock up to weddings and like at their weddings they'll be having a crazy night drinking fancy tequila, and they'll have their ties they'll have their ties wrapped around their heads.
yeah.
That's who those guys are.
But I mean, there was two guys started kissing and everything. Like, no, when I got him going really off the edge that night, and it was very awkward the next morning at breakfast. Well, not for me. I was loving it. Like, if I could have found some ecstasy, I would have given it that to him as well, just
Yeah,
to see what these fuckers would do. Like,
yeah.
so you get to London then, and where's the transition to? Did you say, "Look, I got to get back into broadcasting"? Like, is that because you
Mm,
knew this was you? You were shit
yeah.
hot at it. So
Oh, thanks. No, I didn't think. I've never thought that. I've always thought that. Um, if I can get a good guest, then they'll make me look shit hot or
But
good
no, no,
people.
no, 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 no. This is the nice guy coming out again. You have to back yourself to the hilt, like
No, I back myself. I back the skill set I've got, and I know my lane.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
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 But like I was working. I came over and I worked in recruitment because my friend was like, she goes, "Oh, I was on a 2-year visa, right?" And they go, "Okay." I said I didn't want to work during the weekends, and I was a sports reporter when I came over, so I didn't want to have to work on the weekends. And sports
Yeah.
reporters have to work every weekend.
Yep.
I was on a 2-year visa. I wanted to be able to party in London. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to do what I came over here to do, and go and like visit all this, like experience Europe.
Yeah.
And if you're a sports reporter, you can't. You're a bit restricted when you can do that. And yes, you get to go to the big events and stuff, but you don't get your weekends. You don't get to
No.
socialize. You don't get to meet people. It's very, it's not as glitz and glam as people think. And so my friend was like, try recruitment. It's Monday to Friday, 9 to 5:30. It's just meetings. It's fine. And all you do is talk to people. And I was like, great, this sounds perfect. I'll do this for a couple of years and go home. Did that and ended up being all right at it, because you're just ringing up and you're just having a chat like you're having a chat now. You're just having a chat with someone on the phone, and people would talk back to me and they'd give me business, and I ended up making a bit of money out of it. So I did that, and they sponsored me so I could stay longer.
Okay.
That's how I managed to stay in the UK. Meanwhile, I got approached. Someone tagged me in a Facebook post actually, and then I got approached to see if I wanted to do a podcast with these two rugby guys. One of them, Jim Hamilton, one of them was Andy Good. And I'm like, I had no idea who they were. Like, no idea.
Brilliant. That's perfect.
Even going into the very first time we recorded, someone had written the whole intro for me on them. I didn't have a fucking clue who they were. Jim walks in and I'm like, you are massive. Look at the size of this guy.
He is Sasquatch.
Goody came in. Yeah, he's a giant. Goody came in, and I didn't realize that he had just been playing a year ago. I thought he was 50. I swear on my mother's life, I genuinely thought he'd been retired for 10, 15 years.
He had gone out to seed early.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even when he was fucking playing, the guy, he looked like he'd already packed it in.
Yeah, and it took me a long time to actually like work things through in my head, like the way that he's talking about how he'd just been playing and how he's like going to make a comeback. And I'm thinking, you aren't making a comeback, mate. Like it's jokingly making, like he was joking about. I'm like, clearly he's joking. Like, how are people falling for this? Like, there's no way he's making. But I didn't realize that he had only just been playing. I was thinking he was talking about. This was the guy that hadn't been playing for 10, 15 years that was talking about a comeback. But anyway, yeah, so I thought I'll just keep my sort of finger in the pie, the media pie. It's a good opportunity to do that. So when I go home, I'm not completely cold and I can go back into a media job if I want.
Yeah.
And of course, the rugby pod sort of took off, and that went really well. And then I got to a point there as well where I was kind of like, I've honed a lane, as I mentioned before. My style was like to prompt someone and just keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
And
a lot of the time you can see people don't fucking, they let it run dead. Now the
Mm.
two boys can talk, but at the same time you can sense when you have the time to just keep the ball in the air because they've run out of gas,
Mm.
And that for me is a real talent, to know your timing.
Yeah, I'd like to think it is. And it's like, I think a lot of people make a mistake when, especially in sports broadcasting, where they forget that people don't give a shit about your opinion unless you played to a very, very high level. And so many people get into broadcasting because they're, slightly narcissistic. They think they've got something to say. They've got an opinion on everything. And, I've got something to say. I've got opinion on a lot of things. And I feel like I know a fair bit about rugby because I've grown up my whole life from the moment I could speak, watching, following and playing it. The reality is people listening to that have probably done the same and do not give a fuck about what I've got to say. Like, they care about the insight that a former international's going to have. And it's similar when I'm interviewing someone on my show, is that I'm getting people on because I think they're interesting, right? And if I can get as much interesting chat out of them as that I can, and hopefully people feel like they're there and feel like I'm asking the questions that they want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the rugby pod, you should feel like you're at the pub with these two guys and you're just kind of just sitting there having a beer with them, and hopefully I asked the question that you would ask if you were sitting there having a beer with them.
Oh yeah, it's a perfect facilitator. And also the fact that I think early doors it possibly did help that you were a Kiwi, because it's almost like when I get a phone call from, say, a UK booker for St. Patrick's weekend. They're like, well, you clearly know everything there is to know about being Irish, and it does help when you got, now, okay, there's the dynamic of two English guys on an English podcast, but it does help when you go, yeah, but I'm from New Zealand. Just saying, we kind of fucking know everything there is to know about it,
Yeah, we definitely have a different view on rugby. Yeah, like we definitely have a different view on, but you see it so obviously, and especially on Twitter. Lovely place, Twitter, isn't it?
Oh my God!
You see it so obviously on that, because you see guys that know quite a bit about rugby, and their views on refereeing and the difference in northern versus southern referees, and you can see what they're saying and you can understand what they're saying is, but like I have a completely different view on what I want to see. And,
yeah, of course.
And it's just a whole different philosophy on rugby and how, and it's not necessarily right, or it's, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. It depends, and it swings backwards and forwards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sometimes the northern way is the right way to play. Sometimes the northern way is the right way to ref. And then there'll be periods where everyone's trying to be like the Southern Hemisphere teams. But at the moment, we're all trying to be like the Northern Hemisphere teams. But it doesn't mean that you can't still have your identity and the way that you want to see a game played and refereed.
Everybody from around the world has always looked at New Zealand. I remember even in school playing rugby, and we all had like a Hurricanes jersey, and I remember you would
Crusaders jersey, mate.
Yeah, or somebody was wearing something along the lines that you knew the equivalent child in fucking New Zealand was not wearing a Munster jersey. You know what I mean? They were
no chance.
But
you would have got the Hurricanes jersey because Christian Cullen, right?
Yeah.
And Lomu
and Jason Holland. Jason Holland came to Munster, you see, as well. He would have had a long standing in Munster. Like he would have been one of the he would have been the keystone that would have forged the time when Irish rugby made a turn. He would have been. There was a few guys like Doug Howlett was in there, Rowe was in there. There was a few guys. Irish rugby was going okay, but yet none of the provinces had won the European Cup, and then a few Kiwi just hands in there went, no, this is how you play rugby. And in fairness, it fitted the mold perfectly. I mean, Doug Howlett only just left. I think he got a great gig. I think they sweetened him up. He was like Munster spokesman for whenever they
really.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He took a great.
He was a hell of a player. Man, he was so fast. Like it's weird because you never remember like Howlett doing anything remarkable apart from like running fucking quick when he had the ball and running immaculate lines. He scored so many. He's a leading All Blacks try scorer, right?
55, 56, I think, or something like that. He has.
I don't think no one's crossed 50 yet for the All Blacks.
I'm nearly. No, you're wrong. Sorry, I'm wrong. I think he did it for. There was some number. Maybe he did it in a for the Blues or something. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so I think he's like late 40s. I'm going to say 47. And I think Cullen was like 45. Maybe Jeff Wilson was 45 as well. And then you've got Rokothoko's not far away. Lomu's like in his 30s. But Kiwis, we just know everything about rugby. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Hey, I've got this. Arrogant Kiwis. But Ireland's got like they've got their shit sorted when it comes to pathways and stuff now, though. It's not just like couple of Kiwis come over and made a big difference or anything like that. They've got a hell of a good pathway system for players, and they're producing so many good players. We see so much depth.
The base here for, I suppose, for a lot of players, maybe not so much in the Dublin schools. There's just so much wealth in the Dublin schools that they can put, like players can literally retire from Ireland and like a school like Blackrock and go, hey, you want a full-time job? They go, yeah, great, be our coach. You know, they have that. But outside of that, what you find is a lot of guys have a base, like say Tyg Furlong has a base in Gaelic football. You know,
Really?
Tommy Bowe had a base in Sean O'Brien base in Gaelic football. A lot of these guys, like it's a crazy sporting country too. Or hurling, like Simon Zebo had to make a choice. Does he play county hurling for Cork, or does he play for Munster and Ireland? He was that, you know, he was that good at it. So
Right.
the skills are transfer. Like for the longest time, nobody could beat Ireland for a high ball. Hence why it's called Garryowen, named after a club in Limerick. Because
Oh shit.
we learned from age 4 to catch a ball over our head, stopping it with our thumbs. You know, so rather than taking it into the breadbasket, as I say in wrestling, down
Yeah.
low, you've got your, no matter, even if the guy's like another foot taller than you, you'll beat him because, and hence how Aussie rules came about. It's a mixture of Gaelic football. It's mostly like 70% Gaelic football with
Yeah.
a bit of rugby.
Do you guys still play that in your game where it's crossover, Aussie rules versus the Gaelic football?
Yeah. I
The
I
Aussie
think,
rules guys are all professional though, eh? Like
but
it's
sure,
a massive sport.
they're poaching guys left, right, and center here.
Are they?
Yeah. They're the amount of guys they poach here, because they'll just go, they'll find a 6'4" kid who's like 18 who can, you know, jump over a fucking house, and they'll go, hey man, how would you like to make some money? Now the thing is, it's not professional here, and it could be with the numbers that go to games, it could be, but they have made a vow, no, that'll take everything away from what it stands for. But these
Will
kids,
it though?
no, it would. I've thought about it and I've gone, and the players don't want to make it professional because it's rooted in parochial, and fuck anybody else who wants to look at it. Fuck everybody. From Sky Sports picked it up for a while, and they didn't. And it was great excitement, but nobody cared. If anybody, it was almost like they took what the Kiwi arrogance to their own sports. We don't give a shit what you're doing. If you want to look at it, but it's all about us. And like, you're a superstar if you play on the local team. Do you know, it doesn't, they don't
Yeah.
need it, nor do they want it to go further than their county bounds. They just don't care.
But why wouldn't you want to get paid to do something like that?
I mean, these guys are all right. They're doing okay. You know what I mean?
Well,
In
they have things on the side, like they get,
the,
they get paid a little bit more to do endorsements and stuff. Do they do
yeah, of
endorsements?
course. They're doing okay. And on
Right.
top of that too, if they get a civil servant's job, you know, if they're a cop or whatever, they ain't going to work. You know what I mean? Like, and
Really?
if they are, they dust off the uniform to look good for the newspaper or something. Oh, you know, local county star, All Ireland champion, dusts off his jersey, you know, his they never, they won't get pushed to. Always sport will come first before the job. There's no question. Like, all these lads do absolutely
I
fine on it.
love that. I don't get it, but I love it. Like I do. You do miss that the amateur days of rugby a little bit, where everyone had a backstory away from rugby.
And that's I think they made comparisons about that in the newspaper. I remember when it was really turning a couple of years ago, when serious numbers were show up to games. A lot of merch is sold and everything else, but big, huge sponsorship. But they kind of made a reference to that and going, no, as soon as we do, before you know it, once you enter money, they're going to start bringing in, you know, lads from fucking Russia who are built like a tank. You know, it will just go beyond.
Uh,
It'll go beyond what it is right now. Not to stay
I
stuffy.
see. So that's the bit you're getting at, where you want to keep this thing as our thing rather than.
Grassroots, our thing. Yeah,
I get it. I
because
get it. I remember I went to an All Ireland game at a pub, and that was my first. It's called the All Ireland Day. All
yeah, oh
Ireland.
yeah,
Day?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's Gaelic football and there's hurling. Then hurling is like lacrosse, only
Oh, do
more
they play it
violent.
all on the same day, or is it
No,
or the
it's
game is called the All Ireland Game? Is that the Gaelic football final, right? That's the All
yeah,
Ireland Game.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I mean, you couldn't get into the pub. I couldn't. I was meeting some Irish girls there that I knew at the time, and they were like, "Yeah, come to this. It's on a Sunday." So I went to it. I was like, you couldn't even see the screen, but
oh
that was
yeah.
my first introduction to it. I was like, "This is cool. This is cool."
It's a sport. It's a sport that you would love. I just knowing what I know as much, you would appreciate it because you're like, holy fuck, how are these guys not professional? Like they train
Yeah.
professionally, if you know what I mean. They do. They're all, they get all the time they need to train professionally,
Mm.
and the standard, like hurling is the fastest field sport in the world. Like it'll take you 10 minutes to keep a track on the ball before your eye will actually tune in. You're like, I can see them running. I can see them definitely passing it to each other, but I cannot see the ball.
How big's the ball in hurling? Is it like the same size as a cricket ball?
About the same size as a cricket ball. And there's no gloves, there's no nothing. It's full tilt catching a ball at 100k with your bare hand. 120k with your bare hand.
I'd love that. I'd love that. My hands wouldn't love it now, man. When I catch cricket ball now, I'm like, like every knuckle just, It's like, what's happened? I was saying, I'm just out of practice. And one of the other fellas was like, nah, mate, you get to that. I hadn't played cricket for a while. And I was like, try and catch a ball. And he's like, I thought it was just like my hands were out of practice. He's like, nah, it's just an age thing. You get to a point where your fingers and hands just start feeling every bit of leather.
Can you imagine, like, whatever about us? Can you imagine being like a professional cricketer or a professional and say coming away from it for 5 years and then coming out to play a charity match? And you're like, you can't, you couldn't catch a fucking cold and stuff. It must really hurt the ego, even for us to have to admit that we're getting old. What's that? What's that fucking clicking? Oh, it's your hip, But these guys did the business, for so long.
I mean, like it hurts the ego getting out of bed sometimes. But imagine like if you went going to a charity match and people remember you from 5 years ago being able to play the game, and then you go out and you're like, oh, it's just I'm not even functional anymore.
I suppose it is the joy and the hardship of sports. And I often wonder when I'm listening to your podcast. Now you've every brand of person, but you always seem to pick interesting people. Like there's no two ways about it. You pick people with a great story to tell. A lot of the blokes you have on, they have a fucking hard man story to tell. And I often wonder, because I'm often interested in that. Is it for me? Am I trying to find out what a hard man is? Like, because you grow up hearing these war stories and stuff like that. Do you think you're often having to dig out that and see what makes these absolute beasts tick? Some of those SAS guys and stuff, you're going, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you get different, like obviously there's a lot of different people that go through different hardships and react in different ways. And
yeah,
I think the SAS guys, they all got kind of familiar backstories where they were little shits when they were growing up, or there was something, not necessarily a tough upbringing. A lot of them had tough upbringings where they were in a position when they went through selection, and selection's a tough thing, right? Like it's brutal. And like when you see SAS who does wins and stuff on TV with the DS and the drill sergeants, whatever you want to call them, when they are screaming at people, that doesn't happen in the SAS. You don't get, when you're going through selection, they're asking you if you're okay and if you want to quit, because you can jump in the truck and go home if you want. You don't have to do this. They're looking for people that are self-motivated, that have got the minerals to be able to kick on in the toughest of environments at the toughest of times. And when you think that your tank is empty, you're able to, and they say, I need you to give me some more, then you can give them some more when you think you've got nothing left to give.
Right.
It's about looking for those people, and those people have often got no fallback option. They've got this desperation of going, I can't just go home and pick up a university spot and just start studying. I can't go back and ask daddy for a loan. I can't, you don't see many guys in the SAS or any special forces that, have come from private schools. I'm sure there are some, but I haven't talked to any yet. I haven't met any yet, and I've met quite a few. So, those guys inspire me a lot. And
yes,
they often have these attitudes and a simplified way of looking at really, really tough situations.
Right.
And that's what that's what I try and tap into, and I'm trying to work it out, because you can have a tough day at work and there's lessons to be learned by these guys that you can adapt to a much more trivial, much more,
Yeah.
basic sort of situation that we all face, and like you can adapt those lessons to your situation with their perspective to make things easier for yourself. So that's why I like the SAS guys, and it's always, when you look at selection and you look at, so you might look at selection for example that they go through, and it's always quite a condensed. I mean, it's long enough, but it's like they can explain everything in a condensed way.
Right.
That, let's say if you go through a really tough thing in your life that's drawn out over, let's say I don't know, the worst thing happens to this person that you love, and it's a drawn out process over 5 or 10 years. Like that's a long story. That's a hard thing that you're going to have to go through. But like the SAS guys and their selection process is quite, in comparison, a lot shorter, but the lessons can often be quite similar.
Right.
So they're able to articulate it quite well. And that's what I like about those guys. And but then you get like, I mean, there's other people that you get on that we get on the show as well, and the character of people's ability to endure suffering.
Yes. Yeah.
Come out of it with so much gratitude. And that's another thing. It's not just like, you have the SAS guys who endure suffering and then will inspire you to be motivated even when you're on your ass and you're feeling like shit. And then you've got people that have endured suffering that have a really positive outlook on life and have so much gratitude towards this current situation.
Yeah.
And that's the other bit that inspires me. That's what I love about a lot of the people that I interview that have that. And when I started this podcast, I was quite self-indulgent in the people that I interviewed, wanting to make sure that not every podcast, not every episode that I throw out is necessarily going to be your cup of tea. Not every episode is gonna rate very well. But if I'm interested in it, and if I like the process because I do so much research on it, then I'm going to keep doing it. And that's the main thing, is because like I'm not looking for a steep growth. I'd love it. I would love it, but I'm realistic that if I want a sustained growth over a long period of time, I'm the person that matters. Is what matters.
It's transferable. Honestly, the amount of times I've come on not knowing who you've picked, and it's happened with me. People end up trusting you. They trust Andy Rowe. They're like, well, if Andy likes him, there's got to be something in it. Like I looked back and like the Coffin Confessor. It gives nothing away in its title. But Jesus Christ, you could listen to that guy talk all day long. Like he was.
How funny was he? Yeah.
Oh my! Like for a man who spoke as gruffly as he spoke, but the integrity he had. What, I give a fuck? Oh, I fucking don't. Shut the fuck up! I'm fucking talking. And you're like, this is Chopper Reed, basically. Is who we're listening to. It's Chopper fucking Reed.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I got the fucking truth on my side, mate. So you can fuck off. It's just. I can't argue with you. Mate. But you could say fuck a little bit less.
It was it was so Australian. It was brilliant. It was
so Australian.
But then you flip it back and you go back to, was it Bexy? Bexy was the woman's name?
Bexy Cameron.
Yeah, she'd a cult story.
She grew up in the Children of God, the sex cult.
Phenomenal. But how well-rounded she seemed to be at the end of it. You'd imagine this, I suppose, going back to what you said, it was like taking inspiration from somebody who'd been through a hell and back in, I suppose, a non-established setup. Like, we know about the SES, we know about but we don't know what somebody went through to go through that shit and then come
And
out
that,
well-rounded at the end.
and that's important about the whole, that, you know, she's gone through something over a long period of time. So it's not like she's gone through a like 9-month SAS selection.
Yeah.
So she's gone through like a life of fucked up craziness. And that's where, yeah, you sit back and you kind of like, how you cool it? Like, you're really cool. Like, you're cooler than me. I'm not cool, but you're way cooler than me. And I've been way more sheltered. Like, yeah, you're like, how have you done that? Like, how are you so awesome? How are you so articulate? How are you so much more like in tune with the world than I am? And I've been living in the real world for my whole life, and you've been living in it half your life.
Yeah. It's interesting what the brain can do, isn't it? When it's like, oh no, we need to switch gears here now. We're into new. I suppose if they have the right direction coming out, because you can come out a maniac out of, we all grew up around maniacs. And when you tap into it, you're like, oh, I see why. Yeah, they're all maniacs at home,
And it's so easy, isn't it? Like, you
Yeah.
know, when you're, if you're hanging around with the wrong crowd at school, even if, and you like that, that'll drag you down. That could fuck your life up.
Oh, it's
That
the
could,
one.
like, really quickly. But you have someone like that that's come out of a sex cult and has risen above all of us out of it.
Yeah.
So what? How does that work? You just like, that's the strength of character in people that amazes me like that. Like, it's so interesting. Where I interviewed a girl recently this girl, Freya Lewis, and it's the podcast I've had the most feedback out of any podcast that I've done by a long way. Nothing comes close. Nothing comes remotely close.
Which one was she? I forget the names, but I'm sure I've listened to them all.
She was in the Manchester bombing.
Jesus, I actually, do you know what? I have parked that. The title. I need to be in the right headspace for that.
Mate, you need to be in the right headspace. You need to have a box of tissues, because it was the first episode that, I mean, I've choked up on episodes, but it's the first one where I've actually like cried. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, man. Like, and she is incredible. She is the most incredible. She's so young. I think she's like 22 now, but she was like 17 when it happened, maybe even younger, maybe 15. Oh, fucking hell, man. And the way that she articulates stuff, talking about her presence of mind, where, she just lost her best friend. She didn't know that at that time, but she thought she was about to die. So she rolls away because her father had got to the scene by the stage, and she's like half her arms dangling off, and she thinks she's about to die. She's lying on a table at the arena, and she has a presence of mind. Like, she liked the fact that her father was there, but at the same time, she didn't want that to be the last memory he had of her.
Wow.
So she like turned away from him because she didn't want him to be looking at her during that time. And I was just like, fucking hell, man. Like, what? That bit got me. I
How are you not
nothing.
screaming the fucking house down? You know what I mean? Like, in a selfish, not in a selfish way, but a self-preservation way. Her thought was her dad's mindset.
Bearing in mind how much pain the school would have been in that time
Yeah.
as well. So when they operated on her, they had to pull her teeth out of her stomach. Her bag, like a school bag, and melted into her back. Like, she was fucked. Like, she was about to die. And that's what she thought about, is the not wanting her dad to have that horrible memory of her and have to live with that memory. That's what she thought about. Like, what sort of human is that thoughtful? What sort of person can be like, have the presence of mind when they're thinking they're dying, and in the pain that comes with that, to think about someone else.
And not even a dying from a long illness or something, like literally dying in the most dramatic, terrifying, like a bomb went off that you were no way, she wasn't in a war zone. It was a fucking bomb went off in a, what should have been a happy place. So to keep their fucking head, I can see how you take inspiration for somebody like that going, yeah, I don't, you're a better person than me. I'll just say it now.
Amazing. Like, yeah. Incredible girl, incredible. But like, those are the sort of people that you just feel like if you hang around with enough of them, if you interview enough of them, then maybe something might rub off on you.
But you're loving it though. You can tell you're loving it.
I love it. Yeah.
I make it the comparative thing is when I obviously love podcasting, but when I'm telling like jokes that I'm loving, there is something that people don't even have to be in the room. They know it. They're like, oh, this is even better again. There's a joy in this. And you can hear there's a joy in your voice too. You can't match it on a pitch on a computer anywhere, but there's a not a giddiness is the wrong word, but just an enthusiasm. You're like, oh, this fella's not doing a show for anybody else. Do you know what I mean? You're not, this isn't a radio show for good morning, everybody, and welcome to K1202. The cash call is 2000. You're not, you still sound like you know what I mean?
I hope so. I mean, like, I go back to saying what I said at the start about, it is amazing when someone reaches out to you and says, like, fuck yeah, I love that podcast, or love that story. Like, you do get a buzz and it does pump up your tires, because sometimes you forget that there's other people listening.
I know.
When we're having this conversation, we're not thinking about someone's listening to this. We're having a conversation, and that's when you do put a lot of work into it behind the scenes. A lot goes into a podcast. Like, I'm sure you're probably going to edit a lot of this out. That takes time, and everything takes time. And then there's like, is it going to work? Is it going to sound good? Is anyone going to like it? But at the end of the day, like, that does happen when you put out a podcast and you get nothing back off it. It doesn't go well. And it happens probably more than it doesn't happen. Like, of course, more often you get silence after a podcast. And, it doesn't mean that people aren't enjoying it. Like, when you first start putting a podcast out, you get all the feedback and everyone's all gassed up. Oh, you're doing so well. And then there's an expectation that you're going to continue to produce this quality.
Yeah.
And then every now and then you produce one that's out of the box and someone loves it. So it's good when someone actually gives you feedback. But at the same time, on those quiet periods, on those times, on those episodes when you're not getting much feedback or any feedback at all, you have to be able to go back to that same thing that is, I fucking love what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm enjoying the process of making this content, because if you don't have that, you're fucked. Like, you're not. Most podcasts, I think 2% of podcasts in the world I think it's 2% are producing content regularly. The rest, like 98%, they're producing podcasts and they don't even put them out anymore, or they're not putting out any podcasts. So
I think, especially to go hand in hand with a lot of things, like you're purely podcasting, broadcasting, like, but they go hand in hand with, especially stand-ups. Everybody feels like they need to do a podcast now, and you don't, there's some guys who go, you don't, unless you're absolutely loving it, and it won't come across otherwise. But we've gone nearly the whole podcast, and I have to give myself a pat on the back. I didn't once bring up the Ireland versus New Zealand series. I didn't even bring it up. I
was about to before, actually. Congratulations. Ireland are phenomenal at the moment. Like, their forwards are so destructive. Your back row is destructive. Everything about your game is destructive. If Sexton goes off, you're fucked.
Yeah, that's the reality. That's the reality.
No, it's not. I mean, it is. No, but it might not be. But you've got some decent teams. Every team is. There aren't many international teams where if your top 10 goes off, you're not in a bad spot.
Oh yeah.
So it's pretty easy to just poke that at Ireland, go, if Sexton goes, you nothing. But the reality is, like, the forward pack that Ireland have got, your midfield, all the way through, strong, well organised, got great attack, great defence. It's a great side.
Yeah, I mean, that's all well and good, but how will we do come World Cup? That's what everybody's
Right.
wondering. It was like,
I know. That's where you guys always struggle, isn't it? And as much as, like, it was such a dominant display in New Zealand, I think New Zealand's starting to gain some traction. Oh, well, I say that we'll probably lose 2-0 to the Wallabies and lose the letters though. But I think the one good thing that Foster has done for the All Blacks is, as much as I've hated it, is he's just kept consistency of selection. So they're kind of starting to gel a little bit now. So I don't know.
that was never something that New Zealand teams ever struck me they needed before, was gelling, because there seemed to be kind of an intrinsic. Maybe everybody else had found him out or has caught up with him. It's taken that long, but there seemed to be an intrinsic thing where you could seem to be able to interject almost in the Leinster mold, where you can just plug in, plug out, see who, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think New Zealand rugby's in a bit of trouble, to be fair. It's not just the All Blacks. It's like it's the junior programs all the way down. Like the playing numbers are dropping. I think New Zealand rugby's in a bit of a long-term problem that they're going to need. They've got a big cash injection from the Silver Lake deal, but I don't know. It will always be there or thereabouts, but it's not the
heady days of 2015.
Right. And you forget that, we were pretty lucky for 10 years there. We had two of arguably the greatest players that have ever played the game in the same side.
Yeah.
And then two of the best, like, we had our best ever midfield. And, we had a pretty good team. At one point, I think we had like 3 nominations in 1 year for the IRB World Player of the Year. So, we were pretty lucky. We really stockpiled our quota of good players over the years into one decade.
I wonder the influences coming in from different nationalities and all the rest of it, and that's what makes New Zealand class. Like Rowe, is there an Irish connection? Because Rowe is definitely an Irish name.
Yeah, Rowe's also in Cornwall.
Oh, is it? Well, Cornwall would see itself almost as a different country. Cornwall and Ireland have a lot of ties. Cornwall and Wexford would have a lot of ties because they're pretty much, they could shake hands. They're that close. Like,
yeah, the Rowe's. I don't know. I mean, I know we were coal miners on the West Coast and the South Island.
That sounds very Irish, to be honest.
Yeah.
And Cornish.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't remember what the question was, but yeah, no, I think I'll take Irish. I'm going through my British citizenship at the moment, so I might have to take Northern Irish.
Jesus, yeah, maybe not for too long.
Can I say that? Can I say that? I can't say that, can I? We'll edit that out.
No, I'm going to leave that in just in the little Easter egg for anybody. But yeah, well, I mean, that's an interesting story all in itself. That's going to be very interesting. The next 4 to 5 years, I would say, they could be pulling up the anchor. I'd say, regardless of how 40%, we've seen 50 to 55 right now are looking, percent are going, hey, I think we should fuck off.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Northern Ireland's going to join the whole.
I don't know if they'll join or just fucking secede from the union and form their own.
Yeah.
Own country. I don't know. It's
you ever done a Black Cab tour up there?
I desperately want to do it. I gig up there so often.
Unbelievable. Do it, man. It's one of the best things I've done in Europe. I've traveled a lot. That's one of the best things I've done. Fucking crazy. It's crazy. That's one of the things that I don't know if you've listened to some of the episodes I've done with. I did one with a Protestant lad that grew up during the Troubles in Northern Ireland.
Yes.
I've done another one with a guy who was in the IRA, who grew up, who was around that time. Controversial. Got a lot of bad feedback from that as well. And I'm really interested in that kind of like that history is, it's so raw, isn't it? And people around the world don't understand. Like they don't realize how fresh it is.
They've no grasp of it. Like I've had English mates who have no grasp of the geography of Ireland. Like I grew up 300 miles away from that carry-on. So we'd no idea really. But I've had English mates going, yeah, I was in Ireland years ago. And you were like, and as soon as they start describing it to you, you're like, oh, you were northern, you were still in the UK. Okay, fair enough. So that was in their head. So what's hilarious is a lot of the staunch loyalists, they think they're still wanted, but most of the time they don't even. Most English people don't. They're like, it's over there, so it's not really part. It's not part of us at all. But interestingly, and I had a guy. I used to do this very strange job where I used to teach people how to drive Ferraris. I know.
What?
Yeah, it was a crazy time, Andy. A crazy time. There were Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and I used to teach people how to drive them. But it was
Charles has done well. Charles, look, he's really come on since you got him started, and you should take some credit for that.
But I used to teach people how to drive these things anyway, and I can't take credit for any F1, but it was experiences and stuff like that. These experiences company.
Yeah.
So I had this one guy out in the car, and he'd been in New Zealand for most of his life, and he was now living in Galway. And he was an older guy, and turns out but he did Northern Irish accent. I was like, "How are you here?" He goes, "Oh, I'm just back. Well, I kind of got extradited from New Zealand." I went, "Do tell." And the guy and this is the weird thing about this. I swear to God, if you could hear a podcast microphone in this car, it would have been the greatest thing of all time. The most normal Joes, the one constant being the car, but because their emotions were so up, they felt like they just could unload. Like I had guys telling me that they were cheating on their wife. I had guys, whatever this car used to do to people. So this guy starts unloading, right? Turns out he left Northern Ireland. He can never go back there. Moved to New Zealand, something changed in New Zealand, and basically a SWAT team swarmed his house and fucking extradited him after like 15 or 20 years living quietly in New Zealand somewhere. And allowed him. Yeah, he was allowed to go back to Republic of Ireland, but he can never go back to Northern Ireland. He'd been in prison in the maze for whatever 5 or 6 years. So it was this guy too, and he was like, and you do comedy now in Northern Ireland with your surname O'Mahony. I went, yeah. He went, you would have been fucking murdered for. And he says, where? And I described one place. He goes, that's a comedy club there now. That was a staunch, rough, loyalist pub. My brother's nose got bitten off by a bouncer walking. I'm like, well, I'm going telling dick jokes there on next Friday, so I hope it
You're on a nose joke while you're there.
Yeah, but that's the change. I've seen none of that. Like I go up there and the comedy scene in Northern Ireland is amazing, and everybody's so warm and so excited that somebody with my accent is up there. But then you hear like one mate, he was dropped me back to my car one evening. He was like, yeah, and he started describing visiting his parents through glass. His mother was in prison and his dad was in prison. And he was saying it like the same way you and I would talk about Christmas dinner, just a normal thing. It isn't a raw, weird place up there, but I love it.
Yeah, I loved it, man. And I went up there. Went up there with my mum and my brother, and we did the Black Cab tour, and just how close everything is. Like, and it's not like this thing was like centuries ago, and the landscape's changed. Like you can see everything that was seen. Like what was it? In the 70s, it feels the same. Like it just, and then and then you turn the corner around the street, and the houses kind of change a little bit, and the bunting is over the road, and you're like, okay.
They love bunting. They love bunting.
Especially the English in there, don't they? They love
they love bunting.
Jacks. Or the English, not the English. It's what do you call it? The loyalists.
To be loyalists, loyalists.
Yeah. They love the Union Jacks.
It is a very, very, and that's one that even Northern Irish friends said, give it a go. But we did there's also a great Game of Thrones tour that you
Oh
should do.
yeah, I'd love that because that's where Dragonstone is, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's Winterfell is there as well, and
Is it?
yeah,
Hey.
my wife on her first anniversary surprised me. I thought we were going up just to stay up there and maybe go see a show or something. And then we went. I was driving out to the docks and went, "Where am I going?" And she goes, "Da-da." So we go in, and she goes, "Oh, this is the entire weekend." And we stayed in a small little village on the last night of the long weekend. And what's Game of Thrones about? Because this just looks like a little pub with a few rooms over. Went, you'll see in a minute. And they'd done nothing major to the place, and we're being led up to our rooms. And the rooms are very basic. I went, "Is that Sean Bean on the wall?" I went, "Oh yeah, the entire Stark family stayed here from the entire filming of. They took the place over, the Starks of." So that's kind of what we're well known for now.
It's
But
awesome.
HBO were letting them do nothing to advertise it, but it was so funny in like this really normal restaurant at the back of the bar, which like nanas would come for their Sunday lunch. In one third of it, they had it done like a castle, and you could wear a big cloak and have a sword.
Amazing, amazing.
So you'll love it.
Yeah,
It's quaint as hell, like because they're trying their best, but it's
yeah. We had a Lord of the Rings was done, and obviously in New Zealand, and we're up the river from our house. Was I don't know if you remember the Riders of Rohan. There's like
yeah,
that castle, and
yeah.
yeah, so they built that fucking thing up there, but they had to. They have like really strict environmental stuff in New Zealand, so they had to put everything back exactly like they found it.
Like Burning Man, you
So
can't.
everything left. Like, so they built this really cool set. They had to take it back down. So you can't go there and like you can go there and see where it was, but it's just a hill and a river. Like it's up the river. Like it's not. There's hardly any point in going. Or you can see the scenery and it's like, oh, that's magical. But how cool would it have been if you could like go up there and check it out and be in it?
They did. It's hilarious. I won't keep you any much longer. But they did the very same thing, a very similar thing. Did you ever see the old John Wayne movie called The Quiet Man?
Oh, I watched a lot of John Wayne movies growing up.
He was apparently Irish in it, and it's very diddly dee, and it's very tiddly dee, and Maureen O'Hara's in it. Amazing, amazing looking woman, and it was filmed in a village of Cong, is the name of this village over in Mayo on the
Right.
west of Ireland, and they built an awful lot of it. Um, for the set, because they went, look, we can't just be taking over people's houses. We've that much money. It's a John Wayne movie. Let's build the fucking thing. So they built this village.
Mm.
And when they left, they went, you want us to leave it? They went, yeah, please. Turns out two warring towns couldn't agree on who had the rights over to the tourism thing. So the
Oh
movie crowd
no.
were going, well, listen, who do we sign this contract to? Who the fuck? And they were like, well, it's us, it's us. And he went, we'll do. Fucking knock it. And knock the whole thing. It was like, oh, it would
Oh,
have
what a waste.
it would have been one of those things where it would have been a continuous stream of revenue had they both shaken hands on it forever.
Oh, you guys can't agree on anything, can you?
What an analogy to go back to The Quiet Man and the Troubles in the North. I mean, they're pretty much the same thing. They're pretty much the same thing. So you have the rugby pod for any of my listeners that.
Mm.
I mean, there's some rugby listeners. A lot of people and of course the Andy Rowe show. But did I read? Have you a third one coming out, or did I dream that?
I was working on one with we put out a series with one of the guys I interviewed was a guy called Matt Griffin, and he is a futurist. And
Yes,
yeah, so he's got the
terrifying. By the
mind
way,
blowing
he's
stuff.
fucking
Yeah,
terrifying.
he
The
does
stuff.
utopia and dystopia. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
but his company basically specializes in they advise governments on what's going to happen up until 2070. So it could be technology, it could be you know, in anything like future wise. So it's quite fascinating. But also the fascinating thing is also like what's here now, because anyone can say this is going to happen in 70 years, but some of the technology that's happening now. So we put out a series called The Fanatical Futurist with him. We recorded 4 episodes, but he's quite hard to pin down because he's always traveling. Like he's in different countries the whole time. So,
Right.
yeah, it's been a bit hard to get a bit of traction on that one. So, I don't know. We may put out some more episodes on it, but at the moment, Rugby Pod is back on, and the Andy Rowe show is taking up a lot of my time as well.
I mean, you literally are Andy Rowe. You know what I mean? You can't not be fucking there. You can't, like, that's the other side of it. There's no getting the misses here. You wouldn't step in and record fucker there, would you?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I'm always in character.
Well, Andy Rowe, this has been the absolute joy I knew it would be. Thank you so much for being the legend that I knew would come on.
Oh,
thank you very much.
You so much. It's so kind of you to say that. I've enjoyed every minute. Like, it's so cool and it's so humbling to be able to come on a show like this and just chew the fat, talk.